Hi, Sally. Good to see you. I never worry, so.
So that they couldn't make them take any animals.
That's part of negotiation. Spend some $20.
Well, yeah, the problem. So I was gonna pull that one. They're going to. They're putting them in four losses. Yeah, I kind of feel like I don't know what about it. Yeah. I did make you on that stage. 47. So we're just been on for a while.
All right, welcome everybody. Glad you're here. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'll go ahead and open up the Community Development Agency meeting and call it to order. Time is 7 o'clock. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. So at this time, we'll have roll call.
Please vote for roll call. Thank you. 8 members are present, Mayor.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearings. Is item 1 is resolution 2024-005 to update the downtown Fremont Blight and Substandard study covering an area generally located between 10th Street on the north, Union Street on the east, the railroad between Union Street and Broad Street, and 3rd Street between Broad Street and Ice Street on the south, 50 feet east of Ice Street to Military Avenue, then 8th Street between Military and 10th Street on the west. The properties are located in section 23, township 17N, range 8E, and in section 14, township 17N, range 8E, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska. We'll have staff report on this item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. We contracted with JEO to update the downtown area blight and substandard study. Mr. Ray from JEO is here to give us a presentation, so I will turn it over to him.
Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer said, my name is Jeff Ray with JEO Consulting Group. So I conducted the study. I handed a copy out to you there. I'll go through this quickly and try to summarize the study, not only for your knowledge, but also for the general public, so they understand why we're here, what we're doing, why do we have this ugly economic development name, as we call blight and substandard. Okay. So real quick, I'll do a quick introduction, go through the study area, talk about why we chose that study area, what the analysis, a summary of some of the analysis of findings, and then also what's our recommendation. So quick, the Nebraska state statutes under the community development law provide you with the opportunity to create what is called a blight and substandard determination study. There are two reasons to do that. One is to make your downtown area eligible for federal funds, for CDBG funds for blight and substandard removal. The second is to entertain development with tax increment financing. That's not anything that we're doing tonight. That would be way down the path. You would do that at some time later. This is the first step in doing that. And we have this ugly name called blight and substandard determination. It does not mean that you need to do anything as a city, that the citizens need to do anything. It's simply, are the characteristics of what the state statute defined as blighted and substandard, which I will go over in just a minute, are they present in this area or not? I will mention also that all of the pictures and graphs are taken from the area here. So the first area is that you declare this area blighted and substandard. Then you could create a generalized redevelopment plan or apply for a block grant if that's what you choose. And then you would ultimately implement that plan. So the characteristics of blight and substandard are substantial number of deteriorating structures, unsafe conditions, deterioration of site improvements, stable or decreasing population. Average age of the structures is 40 years of age or older. There's economic or social liabilities that are detrimental to the public's health, safety, and welfare. There's a diversity of ownership. There's been evidence of improper subdivision or obsolete platting. More than half of the area has been unimproved and in the city for over 40 years. There's a high degree of population overcrowding, and there's special taxes or assessments or delinquencies that are greater than the fair market value. So those are the blighted summary of the blighted characteristics under the statute. And then there are characteristics then of substandard, which are similar. Dilapidation, deterioration of age, obsolescence of structures, dangerous conditions to life or property, inadequate provisions for ventilation, air, and light, defective, unusual conditions of title, unemployment is greater than 120% of state or national average, and the per capita income is less than the citywide average. So here I'll get into the area that we studied. Here's a map of that area. This area is generally the same as the area that was previously studied some 15 years ago and then updated shortly after that, about 10 years ago. According to Department of Economic Development, it must be less than 10 years of age to be eligible for CDBG. The area is technically still blighted until the council says it's no longer blighted and substandard. So the area is primarily defined off of property lines. We didn't want to bisect properties. We viewed areas that were their characteristics of blight and substandard. We don't want to include areas where there are not those characteristics. And looked for potential areas for development or redevelopment. That would be the reason to actually be doing this. So that analysis, the summary of the analysis is here. So the structural rating map is on the left, and I realize it's probably hard to see there on there. Every property was viewed from the public right-of-ways, including the alleys, to determine what the structural integrity of that structure was. And if you think of it as, would you normally, a normal homeowner need to hire a contractor to do something, that would fall into the deterioration or dilapidated category and not into the adequate or the no problem category. The majority of structures did fall into that category within this district. 73% did, in fact. And there you can see a picture taken from the alley of a structure that definitely fit into that dilapidated category, or at least the deteriorating category. We looked at lot layouts using the assessor's records. Are there lots that are conducive to current construction standards, or are they too narrow? Most of them in downtown are too narrow. Most people don't look to buy a 25-foot lot to build an office building today. There are L-shaped lots, and there were angled lots, and there were some landlocked lots. So we did determine that there were some odd lots that were in there that did fall into that category of being obsolete platting and or inadequate. We also looked at the public infrastructure and site improvements that were on site to determine what the characteristic of those were. Were the parking lots in good shape, or were they breaking up? Were they gravel? Were the sidewalks in good repair? We looked at the roads. Your roads were really pretty good overall. And from the last downtown revitalization you did, obviously had some pretty good impact on your roads and your sidewalks, and the landscaping and everything is on there. But many of the cross streets did indeed lack some characteristics that had deterioration of the site and those site improvements. Then we looked at potential conditions that could endanger the life or property by fire or flood or other such causes, including debris piles that may harbor vermin or rodents that could spread disease, including piles of tires that could hold water and breed mosquitoes, where there are tripping hazards on sidewalks, and obviously, there's a floodplain. The age of structures, if you remember, prior to 1978, lead paint was legal. And since then it has not, but many of these buildings are older than that, and their interiors still contain much of that lead paint, including some potential asbestos. Many areas there were lack of sidewalks and or even fences to keep people from crossing illegally over railroad tracks, which are adjacent to this. And then there were some threats of overgrown brush and debris in certain areas. So here are a couple examples of some of those lack of sidewalks or debris that were noted, and or a emergency staircase from a second story that's not attached very well and doesn't come all the way to the ground. We also looked at the age of structure. We got the numbers from the year built from the county assessor. Here, the overwhelming majority of the parcels were contained parcels that were over 40 years of age. The average age of the commercial structures was 108 and was 108 and 94. So 108 for residential, 94 for commercial. So well past that criteria of 40 years of age. So as we look at all of these, we turn all of the layers on. We call this the composite characteristics. In other words, which parcels contain these characteristics and which ones don't. As I mentioned earlier, we don't want to include areas that would not have some characteristic of blighted and substandard. And is somebody from the general public able to look at this and say there's a preponderance of evidence in the blight substandard area that this is truly the delineated area to be declared blighted substandard? So we did that. And as you can see, I think almost every parcel had at least one characteristic. Most of them had multiple characteristics of a blighted and or substandard in that area. Therefore, it is our recommendation that you would declare the area that was studied and delineated as the downtown Fremont blight study to be declared blighted and substandard, with 9 of those 12 characteristics of blighting being found to be present and 3 of the substandard characteristics found to be present, or 12 of the total of 16. There is not an actual threshold in the statute that says you have to meet that. Many communities don't have thresholds or don't require a specific amount. 12 is pretty high. Some communities look at it, and if you have 6, that they say that that's enough. 6 of the 12 would even, or 6 of the 16 would potentially be enough to get you there. It's not been tested in the courts, but that's where we're at today. So I threw a lot of information at you and summarized a fairly substantial report. There's also a photo appendix at the end that is part of that to add additional evidence of what characteristics were found in the area. It's not meant to embarrass any property owner or anything. In fact, I did one of these recently in a community, and the mayor's property was on the front cover, and I didn't know it. So I don't take any consideration of to who the ownership actually is. So Joey, hopefully you don't have something in there. I didn't look, and I didn't care to look, and I don't want to know. With that, if you have questions, I'm here.
Thank you very much. Any questions on this item? Councilman Horner?
Yeah, thank you for presentation and for walking us through that. That was helpful. Maybe one kind of dumb question here. I'm just looking at this, and I drive through a lot of this area back and forth several times a day. And I'm just wondering, why just stop at I Street on the west, south of Military? Why didn't it go all the way to Nye, or why didn't it go further? I don't see a lot of difference in those neighborhoods from one house to the other.
Yeah, Jennifer could probably answer some of that. Some of it was, this was pretty close to your existing area. And I think it was probably, where are there opportunities to actually have some redevelopment, and maybe further west, there may not be envisioned that there would be a substantial amount of redevelopment into that area, but Jennifer?
It does closely follow the previous area of the downtown blight and substandard study. We expanded it a little bit to the north and to the east. On the east side, it had been pretty jagged, the delineation line, so we just went straight down a street. We wanted to focus on the downtown area for redevelopment with this particular study. Also, we are only allowed to have a certain percentage of property within town to be considered blighted and substandard. I think that's 30% for a city of the first class, 35. We're currently at 26.5. It's in the report in the consent agenda. So there are opportunities for other areas to be considered blighted and substandard, but we'll want to look at those very carefully at a time when there are potential projects and redevelopment opportunities for those areas. Certainly the residential areas west of here have some opportunities. It has not been a regular use in the city of Fremont to use tax increment financing, for example, in residential areas. That's something we'll need to look at in the future. There could be opportunities for CDBG in those areas, but there aren't right now. So we want to minimize the amount that we blight and substandard until we know that there are good potential projects for those areas, so we retain our ability in the future.
Any other questions from the council? Councilman Von Baron?
Yeah, just as to the nature of the study itself. So we are primarily updating the informations to be eligible for CDBG and TIF. Or was that the primary purpose? It looks like a lot of this was done or understood previously.
Yeah, we updated it because we do anticipate that there will be a request for tax increment financing for the north downtown area for the bank. It can't be used just for a public project, but as we redevelop that area, we'll have redevelopment projects. So we needed to update the blight and substandard study.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Vaughn?
So again, maybe this is probably a question for Jennifer. There are some of these buildings that I cross-reference with a map that I seem to recall recent improvements being done upon. And so it kind of strikes me that they would make the list, and is not to embarrass anybody or anything like that. Could I provide you with a couple of examples, and you could show me the criteria that qualified them?
Jeff did the study, so
Yeah, I'll try to remember.
Well, I can get with you after the meeting or send you an email or
Yeah.
something. That would be all right. Thank you.
Keep in mind too, some of the criteria are even like year that it was built. So if it was built even in the 1920s, but was renovated recently, it still qualifies. Some of it would be site improvements, those types of things as well, not necessarily just the structure.
And the designation is based on an overall preponderance in the area, not on individual specific buildings.
Anything else this time from the council? Okay, thank you very much. I'll now open the public hearing. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from council this time? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2024-005.
Councilman Sukram,
Second.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
I would take a motion to adjourn the Community Development Agency meeting. Councilman Jensen,
Motion to adjourn.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. I'll go ahead and open up the city council regular meeting. The time is 7:18. The Opens Meeting Act is posted on the rear wall next to the agendas. So at this time, we'll have roll call for the city council regular meeting.
Eight council members are present, Mayor.
I don't have any specific comments tonight, so we'll move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is a motion to adopt the current agenda for the April 9, 2024 regular meeting. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Okay. Cast your votes to approve the agenda.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to public hearings. Again, item 2 is resolution 2024-083 to update the downtown Fremont Blight and Substandard study covering an area generally located between 10th Street on the north, Union Street on the east, the railroad between Union Street and Broad Street, and 3rd Street between Broad Street and I Street on the south, 50 feet east of I Street to Military Avenue, then 8th Street between Military and 10th Street on the west. Properties are generally located in section 23, township 17N, range 8E, in section 14, township 17N, range 8E, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska.
Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. Mr. Ray and I are here in case you have any additional questions.
Are there any additional questions from the council? Okay. Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from council on the downtown Fremont Blight and Substandard study? If there are none, I would take a motion to approve. Councilwoman Ganem.
I move we approve resolution 2024-083 to update the downtown Fremont Blight and Substandard study.
Okay, Councilman Jensen. Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 3 is resolution 2024-084 for conditional use permit for an outdoor electronic message sign on property generally located at 1100 South Bud Boulevard in Fremont, Nebraska.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request for an electronic message sign. It meets all of the requirements of the ordinance that we recently passed. It'll be a double-faced sign. Each side will be 48 by 14 feet, and the total height will be 35 feet. There are currently no other electronic signs on the Highway 275 corridor. Again, it meets all of our requirements and staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff on this item? Councilman Vaughn.
I don't believe so, but would our future UDC that we adopt be all right with this as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Horner.
Um, caught you by surprise. Were there any concerns ever expressed by anybody going through this about the effects on anything, distractions or anything? We had quite a bit of a discussion around these kinds of signs, and I'm just kind of curious and if any of the concerns that were expressed in some of those earlier meetings ever came up or was ever discussed or.
There were several of those were addressed. First, the speed at which the messages can change is limited. The brightness of the pixels of the sign is limited. So that should help with any distractions. We've also limited the spacing of these signs and require a conditional use permit for them. Mhm.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, I'll now open the public hearing on this item. Okay, seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from the council? Councilman Horner.
Well, I was just going to say, if there are no other comments, I was just going to make a motion that we would approve resolution 2024-084 for the conditional use permit of an outdoor electric message sign.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will second.
Cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 4 is ordinance 5673 for a change of zone from GI General Industrial to AR Auto Urban Residential for a portion of the vacated Claremar Street located between Railroad Street and Cumming Street.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. This is a request to change the zoning of that northern portion of Claremar Street from the lot line north to Cumming Street from General Industrial to AR, which is the residential designation to the properties to the west and northwest. Staff recommends approval, and the rationale for the entire area is to provide a additional buffer between the industrial and the residential area. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Okay. Councilman Jensen.
Just to clarify, since this is a zoning change, this will require 3 full readings. Is that not correct?
It does require 3 readings. It's associated with the annexation, which comes next, which has to have the 3 readings and we can't waive. And then the street vacation will come with the 3rd reading. Although the property has been dedicated to the city, it's not officially a city street until it's annexed into the city. So it'll be annexed and then vacated.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay. I'll now open the public hearing on this item. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from council? Again, if there are none, I would take a motion. This would be to introduce and hold first reading. Councilman Jensen.
I'll make the motion to introduce and hold first reading of ordinance 5673.
Councilman Sukram.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We'll now have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending ordinance number 5427 as it pertains to the zoning map to rezone the property generally located at the southeast corner of Claremar Ave and East Cumming Street, legally described as that part of the Claremar Avenue right-of-way dedicated to the city of Fremont on August 9th, 2023, that is adjacent to Lot 1, Block 55, Hall subdivision located in Section 24, Township 17, North, Range 8, east of the 6 p.m. Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska, from GI General Industrial to AR Auto Urban Residential, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on first reading.
We'll move on to item 5, which is ordinance 5674, annexing a portion of the vacated Claremar Street located between Railroad Street and Cumming Street into the city of Fremont.
Good evening, Jennifer Dam, Planning Director. Again, this is to annex that entire strip of the property that had been dedicated to us for right of way. And then once it is annexed, the portions of it that are not needed can be vacated and attached to the abutting properties. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this item from the council? Seeing none, I will open up the public hearing on this item. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from the council? Councilwoman Ganem.
No, this just seems like it's a long time in coming and happening. So I'm glad that we're going forward with this.
Councilman Sukram.
I was just gonna say if there's no more comments, I'll make a motion on the ordinance.
Okay, is there a second? Councilwoman Ganem.
Second.
Okay, cast your votes.
Yeah, Councilmember Sukram. Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, annexing by voluntary petition property generally located at the southeast corner of East Cumming Street and Claremont Avenue, Fremont, Dodge County, Nebraska, and extending the corporate limits to include said real estate, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on first reading.
Moving on to item 6 is ordinance 5675, amending Fremont Municipal Code section 11-614.01A to exclude swimming pools from the calculation of impervious coverage. And there is a request to suspend the rules and hold final reading. We'll have a report from Jennifer Dam.
Okay, before I give my report, I do have a letter in support that was emailed to me earlier today, if you would like to receive that.
Okay. Councilman Sukram.
I'll make a motion to receive.
Councilman Vaughn.
I will say.
Cast your votes to receive.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, this is a request to remove 3 words that say "and swimming pools" from the section that deals with accessory structures and impervious coverage. Currently, swimming pools are considered to be part of the impervious coverage on a lot. Previously, before 2017, they were specifically excluded from the definition. And it specifically said the surface water area of pools is excluded from this definition. This has caused a lot of issues for homeowners and pool contractors because pools are generally take up a pretty good size of somebody's backyard. And so a lot of people were finding out after the fact that the pools wouldn't fit in their backyard, or they couldn't have the full decking around it. Then you would have grass around most of the pool, and the grass or dirt would get into the pool and clog the filters. So we've had a lot of requests to change this back to the way it had been. Additionally, our surrounding communities treat it that way. Omaha, Papillion Valley, Columbus, and Kearney use the same definition that we had in the past. Bellevue, Columbus, and Grand Island use a slightly different definition, but yet would allow the pools to be considered as part of the impervious coverage. We're getting to the point where it's pool season and we have permits coming in for people to put their pools in. And so we do have the request to waive the readings and move this forward. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Councilman Jensen.
Just a quick question on, is there any distinction between above ground or in-ground pools that they'll be treated exactly the same?
They're both treated the same.
Councilwoman Lathrop.
I just personally wanted to thank you for changing those 3 little words.
You're welcome.
Are there any other comments or questions at this point? Okay, I'll now open the public hearing on this item. Seeing no comments, I'll close the public hearing. Are there any additional comments from council? Councilman Vaughn.
I was only going to say, no other comments, up, make the motion to approve, hold first reading.
Councilman Horner.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes. This would be to introduce and hold first reading.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
We'll now have first reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending Exhibit B of Ordinance 5427, specifically portions of the UDC, Chapter 11, zoning, subdivision, and site development, Exhibit B, providing for repeal of ordinances conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on first reading.
Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to suspend the rules and hold third and final reading for ordinance 5675.
Councilwoman Lathrop,
Second,
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Now have final reading.
An ordinance of the city of Fremont, Nebraska, amending Exhibit B of Ordinance 5427, specifically portions of the UDC, Chapter 11, zoning, subdivision, and site development, Exhibit B, providing for repeal of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing an effective date on final reading.
Cast your final vote.
Ordinance is approved 8-0, Mayor.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items in the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Are there any items to be removed from the council or staff? Councilwoman Lathrop.
I would like to remove item number 12, please.
Councilman Von Baron.
Just a quick question on item 13.
Staff.
We'd like to remove item number 8 for the claims for an amendment.
Any other items from council or staff? Are there any items from the public to be removed? Seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda, item 7, 9 through 11, 14 through 19. Councilman Horner.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as just stated.
Councilman Sukram.
I'll second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 8 is a motion to approve the March 27, 2024 through April 9, 2024 claims and authorize checks to be drawn on the proper accounts.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jody Sanders, City Administrator. The reason why we pulled the claims from consideration is we are asking the council to amend the claims to change the Forever Homes Inc. payment. I believe it was 14,000 and change. Let's see here, I have it right here, sorry. Excuse me, 12,903.68. It's on page 142 of the agenda. And that amount was less than the $20,000 required by the contract. As you may know, the shelter had an incident of the parvo virus with the dogs. And so for 22 days, they were unable to provide services to dogs. They did handle all of the other animals that came in. The police department reduced the fee based on the services that were provided. We had hoped to come to an agreement on a reduced fee, but our understanding is that Forever Homes might in fact have trouble meeting payroll if we don't get if we don't have that $20,000 payment to them. In speaking with Martha Bang, who's here from Forever Homes, we're going to start working on an MOU because, you know, parvo virus has not been cured and there are a number of other kinds of diseases that may come into the shelter because it is in fact a shelter. They can't, you know, people say, well, why don't you test them? Well, it's not like a kennel situation where, you know, we don't take you unless you have your all of your shots up to date. We take whatever comes in. And so we plan on working together to come up to a solution as to what we're going to do the next time. I understand that they're looking at things that they're considering as Plan B in the event that we have this happening again. All of that said, what we'd be asking then is to change the amount for the Forever Homes Inc. claim to $20,000. And that would, when you approve claims, there's an amount that's on the staff report that shows the total of all claims. And if you are agreeable to amend it, if someone would offer that amendment, the total of all the claims would then become $6,752,122.59. And I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for staff on this? Councilman Vaughn.
So that was the monthly expenditure, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you happen to know off the top of your head what a typical monthly spend is? I should, but I don't.
It's the $20,000.
Oh, it's.
Yeah, we have a contract that says we'll pay $20,000 each month that they provide services.
And they don't ever get more of that due to increased.
No.
Loads. Okay.
Mhm.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my head around it. It was $12,900 and change. So where did those charges come from then?
That was the amount that was calculated. They took the $20,000 that we pay monthly, divided it by 31 days because there were 31 days in March when this happened, and came to a daily rate, and then took that times the 22 days that they were unable to house dogs.
Okay.
The police department actually handled the housing of the dogs during that period, and came up with that number, and actually then divided it in half because they did take all the other animals that came in during that period. And it's that $7,093 $7,096.32 that was deducted. That was an amount that was half of 22 days worth of service. That's how it was calculated.
Right. So it's a calculation versus the default agreement in the contract.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Councilman Horner.
Thank you, Jody, for the explanation on that. Did the city incur additional expenses for housing dogs when we couldn't house them at Forever Homes?
Not significant amounts, no.
I'm sorry, but significant is a rather broad term.
I don't know the exact number, but I know it was something less than about 2,500. I don't know. Chief Elliott was planning on being here, so I don't know exactly how much they spent. Is he coming? Thank you, Jeff.
Jeff Elliott, Chief of Police.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, ask your question.
Incur additional expenses to house dogs if we weren't able to get them at Forever Home. Where did they go and did it cost us additional money?
They went to the police department. It did cost us some additional money. We bought some cages, but I couldn't tell you how much at this point. It was in the hundreds of dollars, not thousands.
Councilwoman Ganem.
And another question, and I'm not sure who can answer, but does $20,000 a month cover the actual costs of the animals that we are
We
giving them in?
We don't know because they are a nonprofit that is, it's just like any vendor. We don't ask the price that you've quoted us. Is that going to pay for your costs? It's not really relevant to the city's business.
Councilman Jensen.
I just want to be clear. We would not remove all dogs from Forever Homes and house them at the city was responsible for taking care of just new entries for that period of time. Is that not correct?
Jeff Elliott, Chief of Police. Yeah, that is correct. It was only dogs that were picked up that were strays at that particular time. Any animals that were already at Forever Homes stayed at Forever Homes. It was just new ones that they didn't want to expose or have the potential to expose to the virus.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chief. Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay. Are there any additional comments from the council on this? Councilman Jensen?
Working in animal control and animal welfare at the same time is a pretty tough needle to thread, and I applaud the efforts of Forever Homes in that endeavor. The need is so great that it often strains their ability to service those needs. And I believe they deserve the support and understanding from our entire community, both publicly and privately. And I thank you again and applaud you for your work. And with that, I'll offer the amendment to change the payments as requested by staff.
Okay, and that amendment would be the total of $6,752,122.59. Councilman Vaughn.
I would echo those same sentiments as Councilmember President Jensen has stated and offer a second.
Okay, it's been a motion and seconded to amend, so I would cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Then we need a vote to the claims as amended, so I would take a motion in that regard. Councilman Jensen.
I will make that motion.
Councilman Sukram.
I will second that.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Moving on to item 12 is resolution 2024-087, affirming the existing policies and approving the proposed changes to the Department of Utilities Customer Service Policy Packet.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Lottie Mitchell, Customer Service Director. Before you this evening is a request to approve our policy packet, affirm what the existing policies are, and to approve the proposed changes. This is a policy packet that we have available for the public to view on our website. It just gives an overview of what products we have, what's required to apply for service, and some of the policies that govern the utilities and what it takes to get utility service. So some of the changes that we are requesting would be to include an inaccessible meter fee, change the reconnect fee to a disconnect fee, and that is in cases of disconnection for non-payment. To also include a meter tampering fee, provide some clarification and wording on minimum deposit amounts, and some other just grammar clarifications and wording clarifications. So at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions, Councilwoman Lathrop.
Okay, I just wanted to state that I pulled this off today. I did attend the UIB meeting this afternoon, and a lot of those questions were answered, but I did speak with some of the council members, and I just wanted to clarify that to everyone as well. My biggest concern was the landowner agreement and landowners, property owners being contacted if there is a disconnect of utility service. As it stands right now with the landowner agreement, the landowner could be notified if you have a third-party notification in effect as well as that landowner agreement. And if you pay an additional sum, anytime there is a disconnect, you could get a certified letter. However, we all know that the mail isn't the speediest thing anymore. And concerns brought forward by a citizen at one point, even before I was a seated council member, we learned that his utilities at his property were disconnected. He was not notified. Yes, I too run properties, and it's still concerning to me that if the tenant's utilities are disconnected due to non-payment, it will revert to the landlord's name. And we would not know until we perhaps receive that letter. That's a hard concept for me. I don't know about any of you, but I don't know that I want to be paying my tenants' utilities at any given time, not to mention just protecting the property. So that's why I brought it forth to the UIB. It's concerning because we certainly want to protect the property. We expect landlords to maintain their properties, so it's hard to maintain sometimes if there's no utilities there also. But as I learned at the meeting, this is more of a procedural issue versus a policy issue. So it is going to be a continuing conversation. And I would invite anybody with thoughts on that to maybe join me in that quest.
Councilman Jensen.
Yeah, I would echo her sentiment there. I would like to see, policy wise, I don't know what ours is. I think it should go to the property owner, at least there's a right to first refusal, to where the property owner knows if you don't pick this up, we're shutting these utilities off. They should know in advance so they can make the call. The property owner can decide whether they're willing to accept that risk or not.
Councilman Horner.
Just a quick question for you. When utilities have to be shut off, is that typically an all or a none, or is it just because they opted not to pay a portion, or how does that work?
In the situation of a non-pay disconnect, we disconnect the electricity, which gets the tenants, attention to let them know that, your lights are off. We don't shut the water off or the gas off at that time. It's an electricity shuttage.
Do you know if a property is all electric before doing that?
Yeah. Yep. And in the case of like Cedar Bluffs, we only service natural gas to the community. In that instance, we would turn off their gas service and lock off the meter.
I guess where I'm going with this, is there ever a time where we could potentially shut off the means of heat and leave the water on in the wintertime?
That's why we encourage all property owners to execute a landowner agreement, so that if your tenant's utilities are disconnected for non-payment within a 48 to 72-hour period, they are automatically transferred back into the property owner's name to protect your property from frozen pipes. And also, like in the summertime, to prevent a refrigerator full of food rotting and odor throughout the house. So we do offer the third-party notification as well, which if your tenant should agree to execute that third-party notification, should their account become delinquent, they receive a delinquent notice, as well as you, the third party on that property. So it gives you a heads up that your tenant is delinquent and they are at risk for disconnection. Once the disconnection is made, the electricity is turned off, usually on a Tuesday or Wednesdays when we do our disconnects. By Friday afternoon, if we've seen no activity and received no correspondence from the tenant, it automatically goes into the landowner's name to protect your property.
Thank you. I'd be willing to work on this ongoing, Lori.
Councilman Vaughn.
Yeah, kind of some of the same sentiments. I can see both sides of it, though. We have plenty of absentee owners that the property owners don't necessarily live in town. They're hard to get a hold of. You have a random email address or PO box. And so the expectation of notifying them just to do them a solid is really not tenable. But at the same time, we all heard about the stories of where this can go awry. So I'm not sure how I feel about it in its entirety, but I would be willing to, again, work with anybody else who would want to take this up and look at it a little closer.
Councilman Von Baron.
Yeah, I'm not trying to just jump in on the bandwagon, but I think it's legitimate. We've had our concern. We aren't big in the rental business, but it's that perfect storm. It's that time lag to 2 to 3 days when it's 20 below. And
we don't disconnect when it's that cold. It has to be above 20 degrees. I mean, we monitor the weather very closely.
Well, yeah.
Apologies for interrupting.
And I think having a standardized notification would get us past some of those judgment things. I have no real concerns about what you're saying, but also given the direction that Fremont is headed, pretty clearly in terms of development, we're headed into more heavily rental development. than single family. And I just agree with the group. I think it'd be good to revisit it.
I did do some research this afternoon as to what other utilities do in this instance. I was able to get a hold of OPPD, Grand Island, and LES, Lincoln Electric System. All of them offer a landowner agreement, just as we do. None of them automatically revert the utilities back to the landowner's name upon a termination for disconnect. None of them call their landlords to give them advanced notice. OPPD is the only one who sends a letter to the landlord at the time of disconnection for non-payment. And I said, well, that could take days, you know, because they don't turn the utilities back on automatically. They wait for the landowner to contact them to tell them what to do with the utilities. And I found that interesting that we actually I feel are doing a good job of preserving our properties by automatically putting the utilities back in the landlord's name. In the cases of the other utilities that we spoke with this afternoon, it could be days or weeks before the landowner would contact the utility to say, hey, go ahead and turn it back on in my name. So I found that interesting.
Any other questions? Councilwoman Ganem?
No, just a comment too, I had been a landowner and rented my properties out. But I did have an agreement with the utilities and they always followed through. I didn't put the extra money to have a certified letter with me because generally I know my tenants well enough, but I'm here. So I'm not one of those out of state or out of town landlords, but they always followed through and I wanted it in my name because I did not want my pipes freezing during the winter. I didn't want to have any food go bad in a refrigerator during the summer. And it didn't. And it only happened one time. And that person had taken off. Anyway, so there wasn't even a tenant present. So I think we're trying to do the right thing. And I also think there's some responsibility on both sides of the owner responsible to say what they want to have done initially and be responsible. But on the other hand, I also see where it would behoove us to somehow work some agreement out that would help the landlords know in advance if that's possible. So usually if we know there's an issue, we can go forward with just finding a solution.
Anybody here to speak on this issue? Okay. All right, any additional comments from council on this item? Councilman Jensen?
Well, if there's no additional comment, I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2024-087.
Councilwoman Ganem?
And
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 7-1, Mayor.
Okay, moving on to item 13 is a move to receive and file the Fremont Housing Agency Annual Report. Councilman Von Baron, you pulled this off, so I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to defer my question, and if there are no other comments, I'll turn it over to public comment.
Okay.
My question's been answered.
Okay, all right. Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, if there's no additional comments, I would move to receive and file the Fremont Housing Agency Annual Report. Councilman Von Baron?
I'll move to accept that report.
Councilman Vaughn?
I was thinking.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
All right, we are headed to new business. Item 20, resolution 2024-094, approving the master fee schedule for the city of Fremont and the Department of Utilities and to authorize staff to assess those fees accordingly to the users of those services. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The the city's been adopting a master fee schedule for going on 4 years now. And so this gives us an opportunity to keep up with our fees on an annual basis, making smaller changes each year instead of large changes that might come as a shock to people. You'll find reviewing this that there's sometimes becomes items that are no longer relevant and can be removed. You can see that find that in a couple places. And then also new fees as a result of changes or updates in state statute. And I think Jennifer, you had an item on there for small wireless. That's something that the state statutes changed and something that, is an example of an addition. I would be happy to answer any questions if I can regarding any changes to the fee schedule. I circulated it to the departments and they provided the information back, and this is their request. So.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the fee schedule from council at this point? Yeah, Councilman Dinkins.
Under Parks and Rec, last one on aquatics. Says private pool rental and then per hour is crossed out. But then on the proposed change, it says 2 hour minimum. Is it per hour or not per hour?
I'm following your question. I'm sorry. I think that what the intent was, and if you know, Tyler, the intent was that we didn't want to open up the pool for less than 2 hours. And that's, Nick is here telling me, yes, that's exactly why they did that. So it's 2 hours. Is it the same price if you want 3 hours, or do we not do 3 hours? 2 hours total.
Okay. Good question. Any other questions on this? Okay, I'll open up public comment on this item. Okay. Seeing no comments, I'll close public comment. Are there any additional comments from council on this master fee schedule? If there are none, I would take a motion. Councilman Vaughn.
Motion to approve.
Councilman Jensen.
I'll second.
Cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 21 is discussion regarding the adoption of outdoor special event application process. I'll turn it over to you, Tyler. This one.
I think Jody wanted to speak on this item. Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's fine. Jody Sanders, City Administrator. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council. We are looking at outdoor events. We've had, as you are well aware, you've received the phone calls of surprises with events, whether it be an event that goes on into the night or the last minute, where are my barricades? I wanted to close this street. And it just feels a little herky-jerky for all of staff. And so we got all of the staff together that deals with this situation, predominantly Nick Hansen from the Parks Department, Carrie Hoffert, the street superintendent, Chief Elliott participated in this conversation as well, and Justin Zetterman as the Public Works Director. And we looked at, and of course, Tyler kind of spearheaded this. And we wanted to make it hopefully easier for both the applicants to kind of check the boxes. Do they know everything that they need? If you want to close a street, we're going to have to provide barricades, that kind of thing, so that it was all already interconnected was the idea with this. We are proposing a filing fee for this purpose. We did not add that to the master fee schedule because we don't want to implement this. It's already April. We don't want to implement this as some people have already gotten their event approved. Some have not. What we propose to do is maybe bring those back in, say, December with an effective date of January 1st in 2025. That gives the nonprofits that are hosting these events the opportunity to kind of adjust their budget when they see what those are. But we wanted to bring what we've together so far to the council to get some input from you, some thoughts, some concerns. One of the big things is that we've proposed is a 2-hour after sunset, that whatever events are being held, that they would be over 2 hours after whatever time sunset is, so that we don't have the late night noise problems that we've had in the past. But I'll turn it over to Tyler. He's got a little bit of a presentation for this.
So as Jody said, really, a discussion on, making it the process easier for council. Currently the process, we have an agreement that we put in place with people. They bring that in and they provide a letter and we kind of accommodate what, they're asking for. I think this would give them more of a roadmap. And I did get some feedback that, the more formalized process would be appreciated. As far as the fees go, a $75 fee for the application, that would help cover some of the costs associated with staff reviewing the applications, and then for the placement of barricades. And with that, we're looking at standardized maps, so that the city council could review a standardized map that would look initially, just of the downtown, because predominantly most of the special events occur in the downtown. Parade routes, kind of getting the community familiarized with the process and, a standard way of doing these special events so that there's fewer surprises that happen. A standardized process for insurance. We'll be able to provide, a documentation to them so that they can provide that information to their insurance company. And we're getting a standard issued insurance policy protecting the city and the event organizer. And then security requirements. Our security requirements associated with events that have alcohol is basically guidance provided directly from the State Liquor Control Commission. The security for events not requiring alcohol, I did receive an email where there was some concern based upon, a cost of a security person for an event. We may want to consider, it would be at your discretion, we could add a box to our form asking what their anticipated attendance is, and then review on a case-by-case basis whether that security would be necessary. Some events you may have 300 people, 1,000 people there all at once. Some may be a longer event where they're filtering in and out, where that level of security may not be necessary. And then Jody touched on the event times, and that being 2 hours after sunset. And so we just want to make sure that we work with our people who provide events that are valuable to the city and continue to support them, and hopefully make it an easier process for them, one that's maybe costs a little bit more for them, but hopefully we provide a good service to them, and I think we will.
Tyler, did you have some background from any other communities that are doing something similar?
Sure. As far as fees goes, some communities, charge a fee. Some communities charge a fee where if the documents are brought in within a short period of time, say within 60 days, there's basically a rush fee. I don't know if we want to consider something like that for an application. Ultimately, the staff that would be reviewing this are salaried positions, but if they're spending their time reviewing applications, they're not spending their time on other responsibilities. And so if somebody's submitting an application, we want them to take it seriously, and we want staff to take it seriously. And if we're receiving a permit fee, we're going to take that seriously. And hopefully, they see the value in that. And this $75 would be on par with what other communities. We looked at Hastings, Columbus, Norfolk as comparables.
This really is a discussion item only, so I think the city team wanted to hear from council on what their thoughts are on this process. And if you think this is a good idea, and is the additional fee a good idea, again, this is not going to be this year as we're looking to next year, but as we keep getting more and more events coming on, which is really, really good. It's a good thing. We just, as a city, want to serve them the best way we possibly can. And so I appreciate their being proactive as our events feature our community and all the things that we have to offer. So Councilman Jensen.
Oh, I would just kind of echo what you thought there about the rush fee. Yeah, as we get more and more events, we're gonna need to have them scheduled more in advance. Where if somebody comes in and wanting to do something, all of a sudden, hey, let's go ahead and do this 30 days from now, that's something we want to discourage. We want these things to be able to calendar in for them to be able to advertise as much as anything else. It needs to be done in advance, and we need to encourage that however we can.
Councilman Horner?
You know, value is a funny thing, and as soon as you put a dollar amount on something, it has a value, and all of a sudden that value is going to become acceptable to somebody. So I think I would be cautious about a rush fee, because then you're going to have a lot of rushes. People are going to look at that and they're going to say, oh, it's $100 rush fee. We'll pay it. You know, there'll be somebody in that group that'll go, I'll pay the rush fee. Don't worry about it. So if you don't want rushed events, I would recommend having a hard and fast deadline on when an event needs to be applied for. And if you can't get it done by then, you're gonna have to move your date. If that's well published, I just think that I love events, and I think we need to encourage them, and I want to make it as easy as possible. But at the same time, as soon as you stick a value on a rush order, you know what? I might even be willing to pay that for my group. If my group wanted to get something done, I might go, hey guys, $50 isn't that much. I'll pay it. Don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden you got more and more people that are going to be, suddenly you're going to be all rushed events, and it's going to be a standard price for you. So I would just, you know, an unintended consequence on that I could see happening pretty quick. The other thing too, is I think to the extent that you can make this a uniform process for people, it will make it easier. And again, I think it's a good sign, Joey, and everyone else, that we're seeing more and more events. I just think it's really cool for the community to have them. And the other one is, I guess, the 2 hours after sunset for me, Jody, that's a moving target as time changes. You know, maybe you just come up with a time where you're not going to have downtown. Maybe you got a little bit of a different time because we do have residents out here. Maybe you let something go on out at Christensen Field a little longer. I don't know. Maybe you look at different areas and say, here, if you want a longer event, or a later event, this is kind of where you're going to need to be. If you're fine with a 10 p.m. cutoff, here's where you can be. I think we can come up with some smart solutions on those.
Councilwoman Lathrop?
I kind of agree with the cutoff times, like the Moo baseball games. If they have extra innings, they do a lot of fireworks, and that draws people down there. So I would be a little concerned about limiting the 2 hour after sunset thing there. The second thing is, I see that it says parade shall be no earlier than 9 a.m., not later than 11. John C. Fremont Days, I think, starts at 12:30 or 1. So I think maybe that time frame needs to be addressed.
Councilwoman Ganem?
Well, I think a lot of my questions have already been asked. But I think the standardization is a good direction. And that certainly I would echo the time, in a time factor rather than 2 hours after sunset. It just makes it clear, and there won't be a moving target, so to speak, with that. The direction we're going with this is excellent. So thank you for all the work that you've done.
And I will give credit, you know, Main Street came forward with all their events at once this year. And so that really helps us, as well as John C. Fremont Days, as we've already been approving their requirements. And so a lot of our organizations are definitely, you know, bringing forward their requirements early and helping us too. And it is a partnership with the events, and we want them to be successful. And obviously we want to provide what we need to provide to them to have a successful event. So, all right. Any other discussion? Councilman Von Baron?
Yeah, just under the item of security, I'm sure some of that is handled by insurance, but do we have any potential liability if an organization just says, hey, you got a concealed carry, come down and walk around a little bit and you'll be our security? Do we have any potential liability? I'm sure they should have insurance to cover that, but what about default for us I know there are some municipalities, municipal organizations that do even have approved vendors for security. Is that something we should look at?
Travis Shakot, City Attorney. As far as regulating the firearm usage,
Security is general.
Security.
I realize the organization will have primary responsibility. They'll cover that liability more than likely with insurance. But should something disastrous happen, does the city have default liability for not overseeing the type or quality of security that's provided?
No, there wouldn't be any default liability for approving a permit on an event like that. Requiring the insurance for these types of events is more to allow, if there is an injury, for there to be compensation. Of course, people may file claims against what they consider to be the deep pockets, which would be the city, but there's a lot of absolute defenses in the Tort Claims Act for that. But that's, we require the insurance so that if there is some sort of catastrophe or injury or something, there would be relief for the party that's hurt.
So once passed, the insurance company will basically address the by default, they're responsible for the quality of security.
The specific applicant would be, and their agent, I think they would associate with that.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I just thought it might be important to mention something, given you had mentioned the Fremont Moo. There's going to be some events that wouldn't fall under this event process. There may be some events that are singularly included within a park, and then the Parks and Recreation Department would still maintain kind of their own policies for certain events that are, held within a park, such as, someone who just wants to rent, a facility. It wouldn't go through this. It would, maintain the current process. This is more for events that spill over from, a city park property onto a street, a downtown parking lot onto a street, and road closures and things like that. So.
All right, well, very good. Thank you, city team, for your work on that. I think we had a good discussion and hopefully you got some good direction as we work on this. So. All right, we'll move on to item 22 is resolution 2024-095 for Unit 8 turbine valve and generator field inspection and generator stator rewind at the Lundy Wright Power Plant.
Mayor, City Council, Jeff Shanahan, Utility General Manager. This item is to primarily rewind Unit 8 generator. Unit 8 is our largest unit in our fleet. The generator windings are recommended to be changed at about 30 to 35 years of service. This unit's been in service since 1976. When we do every 40,000 hours, we either do a generator inspection or a turbine inspection. This year would be the generator inspection. Rather than doing it, we'll do some inspection of the metals, but we're going to change the windings, and we're proposing to change the windings. And then we also asked for a field inspection to be done at the same time. The field is the rotating element that is driven by the turbine. And so they'll haul that off and inspect it, and then low speed balance it. At the same time, every 20,000 hours, so every time we do a turbine inspection and every time we do a generator inspection, we do a turbine valves inspection. And so we're going to do the turbine valves inspections along with this generator rewind. We're doing this in the spring. If it passes, we're doing this in the spring of 2025, along with the implementation of the ELG project. So it's going to be around a 6-week outage. This unit is critical to the operation of our network. And so there's a lot of focus on this, getting this done correctly and getting it done as quick as possible. Be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councilman Horner?
Could you let me know when that starts and I'll try to turn on less lights?
Yeah, there you go. And, again, if you want to have a look at it, we'll certainly have opportunities to see that when it's done.
Councilman Jensen?
Did I understand you? This is not going to happen for over a year? I thought you said spring of 25.
Correct.
Oh, so this is over a year out then?
Correct. Yeah, we got to get in their schedule. We've got to order all the copper. This is a long lead time project. They're only holding, we've got to, if you approve it, we'll get in their schedule right now.
Any other questions? Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, if there's no other comments, I would take a motion. Councilman Vaughn,
Motion to approve.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second.
cast your votes.
The motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Item 23 is resolution 2024-098, authorizing the mayor to sign a 3-year extension agreement with North Risk Partners for City of Fremont Department of Utilities brokerage services for property and casualty insurance.
Hi, Jennifer Nab, Finance Director. Honorable Mayor and City Council, this is for an extension with our current broker. In 2018, we went to RFP to get a new broker, and we ended up with Aon. We chose them because they were the lowest cost and because it was a flat fee, meaning that when they went out and found us insurance, they didn't want to take a percentage of whatever we spent, and they didn't insist that in future years they were going to increase our costs. They did a fine job for us. A few months ago, they sold the business to North Risk Partners. Some of the folks that had institutional knowledge with the city went with them. They sold all their municipalities' business to North Risk. North Risk has done a fine job so far, and in an effort to get our business, they have offered to keep our flat fee without increasing it, with no other costs for an additional 3 years, which I think is an outstanding deal. And this is the kind of thing where we don't necessarily want to go out to RFP all the time because of that institutional knowledge. They are our partner. And so I recommend, and we did take this to UIB and they supported this as well. So we do would like you to consider recommending this so that we can extend our contract with North Risk. And this is a budgeted item for the $29K a year. I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Anybody here to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, if no additional comments from council, I would take a motion. Councilman Jensen,
I'll make the motion to approve resolution 2024-098.
Councilman Sukram,
I'll second that.
cast your votes.
Motion carries 8-0, Mayor.
Councilman Jensen,
A motion to adjourn?
Councilman Vaughn, cast your votes.
It's 8-0, Mayor.
We are adjourned. Have a good night, everybody.